few September long time no see. My name's Mary and this is Happily Ever Esch, and today I'm going to finally be bringing you my August and a few September stragglers. So come join me, let's catch up on all the books that I've been reading lately. So I got into a little bit of a Friday reads rhythm pretty much for all of the month of August. So if you would like some more fresh thoughts on all of these books, or most of these books, I cover a lot of them in those Friday reads, and they'll be linked down below. Just in case you're looking for some more bookish chat, I always try to link my recent videos down below. So the first book that I finished in the month of August was Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This book, I think at the crux of it, is a love story, but this book is definitely not just a love story. There's a quote in this novel where a character is reading a book and someone asks her what the book is about, and she says, "Why do you assume that a novel has to be about just one thing?" And I think that that really kind of captures the essence of this book. Why would we assume that this book is about just one thing? Because it absolutely is not. But again, the crux, a love story between kind of two young lovers, Efemelu and Obinze, who meet in school and fall in love, and their lives just become utterly entwined, and then they both, for their own separate reasons, end up immigrating from their home country of Nigeria. Efemelu immigrates to America and Obinze immigrates to the United Kingdom, and I believe he goes to England, maybe London. I can't exactly remember, but I think he goes to London, and it really just follows their lives from there, why they immigrated, and then how they both made their way back to Nigeria. This novel explores the idea of identity. What does it mean to belong to a place? And then what does it mean to kind of come to belong to a place? Both of our characters are immigrants, and so there is this kind of shared experience of immigration, but also their lives growing up were very different, even though they were both from Nigeria. And so it kind of explores that, like, what does it mean to belong to a place, and how can we all belong to a place but in a different way? So really kind of this idea of the complexity of shared experience versus your continued individual identity, and kind of how do those two things play together, in particular looking at their experiences as they immigrate and then come back to Nigeria, and how their experience of their home country and their experience of America and London respectively is forever going to be a part of their identity and an experience. So I really think that that was what this novel did the best, was kind of that exploration of identity, but also individual experience. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's writing is very biting at times, also very tender at times, and there's a lot of tenderness for the characters, even if you meet them for one page. But she's also very witty and very funny, and kind of gets to the bone of a lot of the matters, just kind of goes straight for it. And I think there is a lot to laugh about, and kind of her commentary is very funny. All that being said, while I did enjoy this, I do think the ending fell a little flat for me, and kind of the world she had been weaving kind of just, it kind of fell flat in the last 100 to 200 pages. It's a very long book. I don't know if it needed to be this long, but that being said, I do feel like I really I knew who the characters were, and she took that time to explore them. So I guess that's kind of up in the air. I'm really glad that I read this. It's really kind of a modern classic in its own right. I think it has a very important place in modern literature, so I'm glad to have read it and kind of have it on my tool belt of books that I've read, I guess you could say. And the longer I sit with this, the more I appreciate what this novel did, and I have fonder and fonder feelings about it as I kind of explore more of her themes and what she's writing about versus the actual storyline. So I hope all that makes sense. A very solid 3.5, 4-star read. I think this is one that, like I said, will kind of continue to go up as I sit away from the actual reading experience. But I can't wait to pick up her short story collection. From reading this novel, I think I'm going to love her short stories. I really hope I'm not wrong about that, but I'm very, very excited to pick up that collection. That's going to be my next Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I have my eyes peeled at all of thrift stores and used bookstores for a copy of that. Next, I ticked off a nonfiction book that was on my top 5 nonfiction books I want to read in 2020. I will link that somewhere so you can go check it out if you're interested. And that's The Woman's Hour, The Great Fight to Win the Vote by Elaine Weiss. I chose this from my shelf because I wanted to read it to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the 19th Amendment being ratified, which gives women the right to vote. I'm so glad that I picked this up. I have a more comprehensive look at the suffrage movement. Let me get that, just one second. It's this brick. It's called Rise of Women, The Remarkable Lives of the Suffragettes. I do think this focuses more on the United Kingdom, UK movement, but I picked this much shorter book up first, and like I said, I'm so glad that I did. This does kind of take a bigger scope and look at the suffragette movement, but it's mostly the kind of last couple weeks in the state of Tennessee, which was the last state to ratify the amendment, and kind of the push and all of the lobbyists and different factions who were there advocating for or against the suffrage movement. I loved the look at this cultural movement. I think it's, as a modern person, it can be something that I could just take for granted. Like, of course I'm a citizen, I have the right to vote, but to kind of see the shift and like all of the work that had to go into that shift in popular opinion, it's really remarkable. I also think it's so important to read history, and this book kind of really solidified that for me, because I do think we can be stuck in this particular hard moment that we're in and think that there's never been hard moments before, there's never been anything like this, and I think reading history really shows that that's not true. We know the end, we know the 19th Amendment gets ratified, but I was still on the edge of my seat. Like, how in the world is this going to pass? Because honestly, the story is remarkable. I also really appreciate that this book didn't shy away from looking at race and how race played into the ratification of the 19th Amendment. I don't think that you can talk about much history in America without talking about race, because it's so intricately woven into our history. And so I appreciate that she didn't gloss over those tough conversations. There was a lot of terrible racism that played into the fight against the ratification of the 19th Amendment, but also a lot of the players and people pushing for the ratification played into that racism to get what they wanted. And I think it's important not to shy away from that, especially as we look and we see so much voter suppression still happening in 2020. And I think if we want to combat that now, we need to have a good understanding of where we've come from. So overall, this was a great read. The audiobook was phenomenal. I will say I'm really glad that I had a physical copy, because there were a lot of people that I was not familiar with, and so it was good to be able to go back, write those names down so I could kind of get a people map in my head. But this was awesome. I highly recommend if you want to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the ratification as well. It was a fun way to have appreciation, but also to know we've got a long way to move forward, and so many women who fought for my right to vote. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. Next was another book club pick, and that is Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. This is a courtroom drama, mystery thriller type book, and I quite enjoyed this one. This is a multiple point of view novel, and the scene is set, there is this medical treatment called HBOT, and essentially there's this submarine that patients go into, and it's pressurized, and they're able to breathe in a lot more oxygen than we typically get when we're breathing air. And it's supposed to be very healing to the cells. There's lots of different ailments and diseases that HBOT is used as treatment for, and some more controversial are autism, and that really is kind of the opening to our story. This submarine, miracle submarine as they call it, explodes, and a couple people die, one of them being a young autistic boy, and his mother is being charged with murder for intentionally blowing up this submarine. And we're kind of following that, like, did she do it, did she not, should she have been giving him this treatment? Like, so much is explored in this novel. But I really think at the crux of this. This book is a comment on the judicial system and what does it mean to be culpable, and can our judicial system ever truly be just, because it can't ever truly capture everything that goes into decisions. And so who gets to be guilty and who gets to not. Angie Kim is a lawyer, was a trial lawyer, and so I really appreciate her perspective. This felt very realistic, and like I believed in what was happening. And yeah, I just thought that her musings on the judicial system were fascinating. It also kind of looks at in particular in this story, how every moment kind of lines up for the end result, and she's just building you this like road to like where we're going. And I thought that that was a really just fun way to write it, and how she showed really every puzzle piece falling in place to get to the end. And so we're going along with her putting that puzzle together. But I also felt like I could get to that conclusion with her, and I really appreciated the way she told this story. Overall, it was a really solid read for me. 3.5, 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, and it seemed like most of the book club members enjoyed it as well, which I'm really glad about because it was my pick, and so you don't want to pick a dud for book club. But yes, I really hope that Angie Kim writes more. She's a wonderful author, and I think that she could have a long and wonderful career in writing courtroom dramas because she does it wonderfully. Next is a book that I picked up at Goodwill and pretty much started reading it right after I bought it, and I was totally sucked in, and that's The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. This was a super fun romance novel that I just got so drawn into from the first page. It's got a totally awesome meet cute. Our two main characters meet in an elevator. He needs a date for a wedding. She agrees, and the story kind of goes from there. I definitely have found from reading this novel that I like more slow burn romance, and that's not what this is. This book is not a slow burn. So that's just kind of a personal preference for me, but I was glad to have kind of figured that out about myself in reading this book. This book is also a lot more steamy than I tend to read, so just kind of for your information. I think that if this book was just like the first kind of like bit, I would have loved it, but I kind of felt like as the novel went on, while the characters had great chemistry and I wanted to know how their relationship was going to play out, I didn't really care about them apart from their relationship. I didn't really feel like I knew who they were apart from their relationship. And so I think that's what kind of just like left it at like a middling book for me. It was like a solid 3-star read. I had a lot of fun with it. I was invested. I wanted to know what happened. But overall, the characters, apart from their chemistry and relationship, did fall pretty flat for me. Overall, quick, fun summer read. I'm really glad that I read it. I gobbled it up in a few days. It was so much fun to read, but not gonna be like a favorite book of the year. You know what I mean? And then a book that probably will be a favorite book of the year, and that's Our Souls at Night by Kent Haruf. I adored this book. It's a very short, sparsely written book that you could read in one sitting, and it transported me. Kent Haruf writes in such a simple, bare bones way, but he packs such an emotional punch in his writing, and he draws me in and gets me so utterly enveloped in these characters' lives. So the story starts out with two elderly neighbors, Addie and Lewis. Addie goes over to Lewis's house and proposes that they spend their evenings together, kind of to stave off loneliness for companionship and friendship, and Lewis agrees, and it's a look at the need for friendship and companionship, no matter what stage of life you're in, but also what does it mean to live outside of others' expectations for you, and when is it worth it and when is it not. Kent Haruf, he just writes about everyday moments that you can put yourself in, moments that you've had with such tenderness and compassion and love, and he just makes me appreciate being alive and a human, and appreciate human connection. Man, I ended this book and I was just sobbing. Like, I have not sobbed like this in a long time, but man, Kent Haruf just, yeah, he pierced my heart with this story. I think I'm gonna love all of his work. I've read Plainsong and adored it, and this was no exception. It was beautiful and sparse, and just compelling. I adored it. I'm just gushing at this point because it was so beautiful and lovely. And Kent Harf died before this book was published. He was diagnosed with a terminal cancer and was writing this book kind of going through that. And I think there is a love for life that he gives to this, and kind of a love letter to being a human and being alive, and what that means. Oh, I loved it so much. And I don't have anything else to say about it, but that I loved it. All right, and then 2 books that were September stragglers. The first one was a buddy read with Amanda over at the Curly Reader, and I totally enjoy buddy reading with her. She always has such great things to say, and I think we read very differently. Not really like the books we read are that different, but like how we read different, and so she always is pointing things out that I didn't see. And so I really think that that's the cool thing about buddy reading, is you get this like so much more full experience because of what your buddy contributes to your reading experience. Anyway, this is not like sponsored by Buddy Reads, but I did enjoy reading it with Amanda. And we also had very similar feelings on the book, and this is like a stab in the heart disappointment, honestly. So it's This Tender Land by William Kent Kruger, and I didn't love it, guys. Like just, if it's going to like rip your heart out to hear me say that I didn't love your favorite book of the year, skip ahead until I hold my next book up. I don't think that this is a bad book in any stretch of the imagination. I was just disappointed because I didn't love it as much as so many people do. And I wanted to love this book so much. This book is kind of a retelling of a classic adventure story, really like Tales, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. And there's so many moments I loved in this book. There's so much beautiful writing. There's so many quotes that I underlined. It's a book I would consider rereading, just with like my tempered expectations. But ultimately why I think that this book didn't do it for me was because he was trying to do so much. And it's not a small book, but it's one story. And I feel like you kind of have to pick something that you're going to do and do it, you know? There was these moments that felt surreal, and our main character is an old man telling the story of his childhood. And so there is this like feeling of myths, and how we make myths of our childhood, and how we kind of rewrite our childhood to like tell ourselves stories and kind of like soothe our own souls in a way. And there's a look at childhood trauma and so much there. But then there's also these like moments of very like realistic reality storytelling that they just didn't fit with me. And then also he's doing so much, bringing up so many things, talking about so many things that I just felt overwhelmed. And so yeah, it just didn't quite do it for me. And I did not like the ending. I was very dissatisfied with the last part. So gosh, I don't know. There's like part of me that liked this book and part of me that didn't, because I just felt like it was 2 different stories. I'm so disappointed. This is so loved. It was a Book of the Month Club favorite pick, and yeah, just it wasn't mine, and that's okay. I'm really glad that Amanda had similar feelings to me, because it would have been really sad if like one of us super loved it and one of us didn't. But it was disappointing, to say the least. All right, and to end on a super positive note, I finally finished the next in Jessica Townsend's Nevermore series, The Wundersmith, The Calling of Morrigan Crow. I was saying her name Morrigan, but it's Morrigan, not Morgan. And my sister's name's Morgan, but information you didn't need to know, but audiobooks, life-changing. I was like, oh, Morrigan, of course, that's her name. Anyway, I loved this. I adored it. I think I loved it more than Nevermore. I'm so sucked into this world. I'm so glad that I finally finished this, and my library finally got the audiobook, because I think the audiobook added to the magic. It's like this magical story being read to you. And oh my word, I love Nevermore. I love everything about it, and I'm already like counting down the days until Hollowpox is released, and then I don't know what I'm going to do without the 4th book. But I don't even know if I can articulate what this book is about. We kind of have magic magical world, magical boarding school vibes. We have in the first book these trials to get into this magical school. We have a chosen child, we have an evil villain, we have like all of the kind of like typical child fantasy elements, but in its own unique world with its own unique voice of Jessica Townsend writing it. I'm sure you've heard lots of people gush about this book, and I liked Nevermore. I liked it a lot, but this book I loved, and I'm totally sucked in, and I'm here. I'm along for the ride. Can't wait for Hollowpox. I'm so excited. All right, friends. This is the second time recording this video because I rambled too long the first time, and I'm not sure that I did any better this time. So I guess you're gonna get what you're gonna get. Thank you if you stuck around to the end. I appreciate you. Please like this video if you enjoy. Please subscribe if you want to see more bookish content from me. I've been trying to post on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I had a little extended break just because of life, you know, it happens. But I'm going to try to get back on that schedule. You shall be seeing a book haul after this video. So lots of new books. Where am I going to put them? I don't know. Don't ask. We're going to figure it out. All right, friends. I will talk to you later. Bye.